Wait, actually, do you guys want me to make a top 10 Genshin supports? Not in terms of how good they are, but how impactful I feel like they have been on the meta over the years. Like a hall of fame of supports. Dude, I'm down actually. All right, so we gotta separate the contenders from the non-contenders. So first of all, okay, I don't think anyone who came out in Nodcry should be considered because they just haven't been out for long enough to merit a Hall of Fame. Like you can't Hall of Fame someone the first season they play, right? Like that's not how that works. So no one who came out in Nograi, and I'm including Inefa in that, can be there. Mona, I mean, Mona was never anywhere close to a Hall of Fame contender until the witch buffs, which is also incredibly recent. Shenhe, don't. You're actually just baiting me to say negative things about Shenhe right now. Like you don't even believe that. I know you don't. Okay. So who am I actually considering it like who do I feel like can be cuz right now we have what 10 11 21, right? So 11 of these characters won't make it into the top 10. So who does not make it into the top 10? I think Eonson hasn't been out for long enough. I think Escoffier hasn't been out for long enough. I think Mawika's support is kind of fake anyways. Like it's never really a support. What the Oh, my mouse did the thing. I was like, how did my Mawika turn into Inefa? But my mouse did the thing. Okay. Yeah, Farazan definitely doesn't make it. Yeah. I think Seatlali probably has been out for long enough, but I feel like when it comes to Seatlali, she's kind of only that good for Mawika. You know? She is also really good for like Gumming, but no one plays Gumming. And she's not actually that good for Arlecchino. Like, she is good for Arlecchino, but Arlecchino has other options that are about as good as Melt anyways. So it's not like you need to have Seatlali for Arlecchino. And it's still very, like, limited, I feel. So I think she's out. Okay, Xianyun definitely out as well. Just doesn't quite get there. Alright, I want to talk about Raiden real quick. I don't think I'm gonna have Raiden in the top 10, but like I actually do think that basically since Sumeru came out, Raiden has been more defined, at least in my eyes, by her role as a Hyper Bloom trigger than by anything else. But as much as I think Raiden is a better Hyper Bloom trigger than Kuki, I don't think she's got that sort of Hall of Fame vibe in Hyper Bloom. And I think Kuki does. Nahida, honestly, I don't think Nahida gets Hall of Famed. Because, like, when Nahida was very meta, she was carried by how good Dendro was as a whole. And I feel like Nahida just wasn't what made Hyper Bloom good. She was basically the only Dendro until Llama. I mean, that's not even all that true. I don't know, man. I think the biggest factor that prevents or that's like making me want to not put Nahida in top 10 Hall of Fame is what made Hyper Bloom so good was like that it was a relatively low investment team that could clear content. But like it had the ability to clear content without Nahida. And for people that wanted to do more than just barely clear content, they generally just had better teams than Hyper Bloom. Right? And like Nahida's like not even top 2 in the Hyper Bloom core in terms of units that weren't Hall of Fame to me. And Hyper Bloom as a team just isn't good enough to warrant having 3 units in Hall of Fame, in my opinion. But I would put Kuki and I would put Singto in the Hall of Fame over Nahida any day of the week. So I'm not putting Nahida in there. Chat, I'm gonna be honest, alright? I think that people overestimate the value of Nahida in the Hyperbloom teams because Dendro came out after. Like, if Dendro came out in 1.0, people would realize that, oh wait, actually, having fast Hydro and having the ability to actually target the seeds reliably and consistently are just as important as having Dendro. People overestimate how much Nahida does for the team because they didn't have Dendro before Sumeru. And so when Dendro was added to the game, it was like, oh, this new thing is made possible by the Dendro being there. But like, sure, but it's also made possible by the Hydro and the Electro. Nahida was the only real option for Aggravate / Spread. I mean, that's not true at all, actually. For Spread, I guess, sure. For Aggravate, fuck no. Nahida only buffing the on-field character was a massive gimp to Aggravate teams. Because she doesn't buff Fischl. I feel like this is hindsight downplaying. I mean, I'm not saying Nahida wasn't impactful, but in a top 10 list, there's only 10 fucking spots. Okay? And there's more than 10 units that have been very impactful to the meta. No matter who I say I'm not putting in the top 10, some people are gonna be like, no, but they were really impactful. They were really good. I'm like, yeah, they were. No way Kuki over Nahida? Okay. Be so for real right now. How do you think Hyperbloom would have been perceived if your best Hyperbloom trigger for people who didn't pull Raiden was Dory? Have you ever played Dory Hyperbloom? Again, right? People underestimate how important the non-Dendro role are in the Dendro teams because Dendro came after the other elements. What about Sucrose? Sucrose is just so much harder to play in those Hyperbloom teams. I think both play equal parts. I mean, if both play equal parts, I guess I could remove both, sure. I just personally think that Kuki, because she's a 4-star that everyone has, and because 4-star Hyperbloom clears were really impactful to the just overall health of the meta and the balance of the game throughout Sumeru and for pretty much all of Fontaine as well, Kuki deserves the spot in the Hall of Fame way more than Nahida does. Because again, this is not top 10 most powerful supports of all time. This is a Hall of Fame for importance. And I think that Kuki is just way more important and impactful. So none of the 5 stars deserve it. I mean, I didn't say that. But I think the bar for 5 stars is higher. So right now we have 13 left, so we need to knock another 3 out. I don't think 4 stars is that much of an importance, since 4 star only isn't a thing most accounts strive for or want to do. Okay, but will most accounts strive for a Hyperbloom team? Again, right? Like, you have to understand, okay? Hyperbloom was never the stuff that was incredibly good for high investment accounts. It never was. Even when it was popular, even when it was good, people that wanted to do vertical investment on stuff wouldn't go for Hyperbloom over other things. As far as I'm concerned, the historical importance of Hyperbloom to the Genshin meta is defined by its approachability in team building. When it comes to other teams outside of Hyperbloom, because those other teams, other than like maybe National, I guess, aren't defined by how approachable they are, I don't think that a 4-star gets an inherent major advantage over a 5-star. But in Hyperbloom, I think it does, and I think it should. Anyways. Next, I think Venti doesn't go in. Because Venti was too strong, basically. Venti was strong enough that Hoyo straight up changed their whole content design philosophy to make it so Venti wouldn't work. And they did that early as fuck. Isn't that insane impact? But the thing is, yeah, his existence changed the way things were designed in terms of content. But, like, it changed and it never really came back. So, like, it just, yeah. Didn't Kokomi have the same impact in that sense? But yeah, like, you could argue, like, to this day, content is still designed to be anti-Venti, but I think that they kind of just shifted their design philosophy when it came to, like, combat content as a result of Venti. But, like, once that shift happened, it's not really Venti's influence anymore. He was very impactful, but he was very impactful relatively early, and then the change happened, and then he kind of stopped being relevant. Yeah, like, you could make the argument that it would have changed anyways, because with people getting better at the game and rotations as a concept becoming something that people actually strive to do, it just feels more rewarding to be fighting high HP single target enemies than just a fuck ton of Hilly Charles and shit like that. So like, you could make the argument that the content would have changed to become what it is now, even if it wasn't for Venti's influence. It just would have taken longer. We need to knock out 2 more, right? Shilonen out. And honestly, okay, everyone say who you think I'm gonna take out here. Because I feel like I'm gonna surprise, like, literally everyone. Okay, I saw one person say who I'm gonna take out. 2 people. 3. 4. Unfortunately, I think Sucrose just... I think if people were better at the game and smarter, Sucrose would definitely be a Hall of Fame contender, but the reality is that people just aren't. It doesn't matter how good a unit is if no one plays her. Like, Sucrose was, like, one of the best units in the game, consistently, from 1.0 to now. But people just really didn't play her. Yeah, she came back recently with Nodcry. But like I said, right, I'm not really considering Nodcry as a whole. And this isn't a top 10 supports I think are the best supports I think I like the most. Right, this is trying to give as close as possible to an objective top 10 units who were the most impactful to the Genshin meta as a whole. And I just think that as good as Sucrose is, she wasn't all that impactful to the meta. Because historically, every single team in which Sucrose has been good, there's always been other alternatives that weren't that much worse. And most people played those alternatives over Sucrose. 0 Dendros because it's never been played ever. I mean, listen, alright? I gotta be honest with you, alright? Nilo teams were always kind of fake before Loma. And Aggravate teams were only all that relevant for like 5 patches or some shit. Like, Dendro is Hyperbloom. It's really just one team that was actually relevant to the meta. And we have a unit that's here because of Hyperbloom already. We don't need more than one necessarily. Right? Just because the Dendro isn't here doesn't mean that the Hyperbloom is. Alright. Now we order them from number 1 to number 10. Do we do them in reverse order? I think we do, right? Number 10. Everyone is saying Yelan. You guys really don't like Yelan, huh? I mean, I also kind of don't like Yelan, but I don't think she's 10. How is Yelan huge impact? Yelan was incredibly impactful for team building from her release to, like, late Sumeru. Singso is better than Yelan? I don't disagree. You only have one Singso, though, and Singso was good enough to warrant wanting 2. Why do Singso and Yelan both get to be there? Because I just think Yelan has been more impactful than Nahida. Like, but maybe she's still 10, because these other units are also very impactful. Sure, fine. We're gonna have Yelan at number 10. You're correct, but Chad is Farina Zoomers. So true, actually. Zoomers think it's all about Farina, okay? But back in my day. Back in my day. Alright. I think number 9, probably Zhongli. The thing about Zhongli is, like, his impact on the meta is just, and his impact on Genshin as a whole is, like, it's so hard to properly conceptualize. Because he was never really part of the best teams. But he was, like, always relevant. Well, okay. Post-buff Zhongli. Not pre-buff Zhongli. Pre-buff Zhongli was not relevant. That unit sucked ass. Like, I'm pretty sure fully ML Beto was better than fucking pre-buff Zhongli, okay? Like, still find many casual players appreciating Zhongli today, yeah. Like, I think nowadays Zhongli's a bit more questionable, just because we have so many more shielders than we did back then, right? And like, nowadays, if you want a shielder, there's generally a different unit that also just works with your team better than Zhongli while also providing a shield that's just as much going to prevent you from dying. But I'd say that, like, pre-Lanyan, Zhongli was, like, pretty much always the best defensive option for a team, if you could fit him. If I make this list, like, a year from now again, because of Inefa, I think Zhongli is going to be gone. Just wait for the Zhongli buffs, true. Alright. Next, probably Fischl. The thing with Fischl is, like, Fischl was never at the forefront. Well, I guess other than, like, 1.0, when your best teams were just National and Taser, and you kind of just had one Sucrose that you wanted to juggle around between two teams. Sucrose was, or sorry, Fischl was always, like, one of the good options for the good meta teams, but never, like, at the very front. And as a 4-star unit, she was relatively less popular, right? Because all 4-star units, unless they're omega broken, are fairly unpopular. But I just think that the remaining units are just more impactful. I think Fischl is, like, when it starts to be like, I almost only have positive things to say about how impactful they were on the meta. Why is Kazuha there but no Shilonen? Because Shilonen hasn't been out for that long, and honestly, she's also just not that good. Like, sure, if Shilonen came out in 1.0 and was relevant in the same way that she is now, for fucking 5 years like Fischl, then yeah, she'd make it in here. But she didn't. Right? Shilonen came out, she was alright, pretty good, very usable, but not amazing. And she's stayed there for like a year. There's a lot of units that have done that. Next is Kuki. Right? Hyperbloom, very impactful to the meta, but at the end of the day, Hyperbloom came out in 3.0 and kind of started falling off with Natlan, so it's like 2 major versions. But there's just a few more teams that were more impactful than Hyperbloom as a whole, I think. You don't really use Kuki outside of Hyperbloom very much. So I think this is enough. Next is Xiangling. Honestly, the main reason why Xiangling is this low is because I feel like half iffy about calling her a support. But I do think enough people perceive her as a support that she should be included here. Next is probably Chevreuse. Chevreuse top 3 for sure. I don't agree with that. Compared to these other units, right? Compared to these 3, she came out a lot later. And compared to Farina, she was just using a lot less teams. Chevreuse wasn't that impactful. I mean, I don't agree with that. I think Chevreuse was very impactful. Like, very impactful. She's really good, but only in Overload. I mean, sure. But, like, are you going to say that Marika wasn't important or wasn't impactful on the meta because she's really good, but only in Melt and Overload? You're going to say that Skirk isn't really impactful to the meta because she's really good, but only in Freeze? Like, she is Overload. That beats Farina. I don't think it does. Because the reality is that there are a lot of accounts that don't have a carry they want to play in Overload teams. I think next is Kazuha. I think the thing that's holding Kazuha back from top 3 is that he was just never as strong at his peak as the remaining 3. Right? Like, Sucrose isn't being included in the top 10 list, but her impact can be felt. Number 3 is Singto. This might surprise some of you guys. I'm putting Singto below Farina. Again, I think if people were better at the game, Singto probably would be above Farina. But the reality is that there are a lot of people who just historically didn't want to use Singto, use Yelan over him. But Singso is this high, and for sure this high, because Singso was the best unit in the game for a fairly long period. He was incredibly impactful to the teams that were meta relevant for a long ass time, right? Singso made National good. Singso made Hyperbloom good. Singso made Taser playable at all. Singso made Hu Tao playable at all. And even nowadays, when just having a lot of application is just not quite enough for a unit to be too valuable anymore, and like defensive utility is often provided by a fucking random ass unit that just has, oh yeah, let's just give Escoffier infinite healing because she needs that. Let's give Inefa the fucking biggest shield in the game, yeah, because she needs that. And the defensive utility provided by Singso is like less valuable because of that. Even now, Singso still sees a lot of play just because the ability to apply a Hydro as fast as he does is often useful for matchup dependent stuff, for shield breaking and stuff like that. Nivedette is now the best Hydro applier? No. He applies Hydro way slower than Singso. The only character that can compete with Singso Hydro application is Child or like Ayato with Venti in AoE. Yelan has slower Hydro app? Yeah, way slower. Right? Is Yelan C2 less? Yeah, Yelan C2 is still less Hydro app than Singso. Because Singso is every wave, you get one Hydro app, but if you have C6, every third wave is 2 instead, so it's 1.33. On top of that, he also has orbitals that apply Hydro almost as fast as Kokomi's skill does. So he ends up with like almost two Hydro apps per second. Is there ever a reason to use Yolando apart from Singso being on another team? With the power creep that the game has seen, off-field damage becomes less and less relevant. So the fact that Yelan provides damage percent only to the on-fielder isn't as big of a downside as it used to be. And so Yelan can be better than Singso if you care about having the damage percent on your carry, like on Skirk, for example. And also, starting in like, when did it really start? Like late, starting in like Fontaine-ish, I guess. They started designing carries to have rotations shorter than 20 seconds. So Singso, instead of being plus 1 second because of the skill 21 second cooldown, is now like plus 3 seconds to your rotation. Because it's 18 to 21 instead of 20 to 21, which is a lot more of a downside. Anyways, next, number 2 is Farina. As much as I don't think Farina, just in terms of power, is like all that amazing, the reality is that they have kind of designed units that came out after her around her, right? Like, you look at Escoffier, and the reason why Escoffier is a healer is because Farina exists. It's because they wanted Skirk to have a premium healer option. If Farina didn't exist, Escoffier probably wouldn't be a healer. Nowadays, Farina's only really part of the premium teams for Skirk and, like, Neuvillette, but outside of the crab this Stygian, no one plays Neuvillette. Let's be so for real. But that's just because we've seen a lot of power creep in Natlan, and a lot of the Natlan units don't really like Farina, and the Nocry units obviously don't really like Farina that much either. When you look at the Fontaine units, right, a lot of them do use Farina fairly well, at least as one of their options. Also, the units released before Farina. Like, Farina can always warrant a place on the team just because if a carry doesn't have a great artifact set, you can use Mago Jose. And honestly, Farina is so popular that, like, half of the Farina owners decided to go for C2. Like, unironically, part of what makes Farina this impactful for the meta is that everyone went for her cons. A character being popular doesn't mean they're good. I mean, it's not like Farina's bad, though. And the reality is that, unlike Singto, Farina is a unit that stays on your team when you're looking at premium stuff and you want to make stronger teams, right? With Singto, very often, optimal whale teams don't really use him anymore. And because of that, a lot of people ended up benching Singto, right? Because for their account, he just wasn't that great. When it comes to Farina, honestly, because the carries that are good with her are so popular, she's kind of just stayed very, very relevant. I think if I make this list again a year from now, Farina will not be here anymore. Right? I mean, they could just design more units that want Farina. So maybe that's not true, right? But like, I feel like if I was including Escoffier, it might bring down Farina a little bit. Because if you look at it just like in terms of time, right? Farina was only like actually at the top of the meta for about a year, right? Like with Natlin, she kind of fell off. And I think that she during that year she was a lot more popular than someone like Singto. But I think that unless like Skirk gets a really good last slot that makes her compete with whatever's coming in like early 7.x, or whatever's coming in early 7.x wants to use Farina, with time, Farina's 1 year of fame won't really beat out Singto. But I think right now it probably does. And yeah, finally, obviously, like, I don't think I need to explain anything about this. Bennett is the GOAT. Skirk is the only attack scaler to ever escape Bennett. Is she? Is that true? I mean, Flynn's escaped Bennett. Kind of. I guess not really, because Bennett is still a good option if you want a healer on your team, because Yehuda's a fucking fraud. Especially if you have C2 or if you're against enemies that have low res. Varessa? I guess. Kanichu? No, not Kanich. Kanich is like trying really hard to escape Bennett, but he's not getting there. Oh yeah, let me just play a Kanich team, a character that can't actually dash to dodge incoming attacks because he loses too much DPS doing so, without a healer. This will be fun. This will be great. I will have a good time. No. No, you're still putting Bennett on your Kanich team. Don't lie to yourself. Like, I think nowadays there are quite a few attack scalers that don't necessarily want to use Bennett. But pretty much all of them can still use him. And also, it's not like Bennett is gone from the meta at all. Like, he's still part of what's arguably the best team right now. And also, he's been in that spot for, like, over 5 years. Like, it'll take... Even if they straight up never make an attack scaler again, I think Bennett is staying top 1 Hall of Fame at least for another 5 years. Because it's gonna take 5 years for someone to be as relevant for 5 years as Bennett was. The thing that a lot of people tend to forget is that usually Kingdom-centered calcs use 4-star weapons, but a lot of people have Aquila or Skyward Blade. And because of that, very often, Bennett is actually better than than calcs say for people that don't go for SIGs.